The first sound that broke the silence of the mansion that night was not the ticking of the antique clock, nor the distant hum of the city. It was Rusty's broken whimper, thin and hoarse, echoing through marble halls that had forgotten how to hold laughter. For 3 nights in a row, the old dog had refused to eat. He lay curled beside an untouched bowl in Michael Davenport's home office, ribs beginning to show beneath thinning fur, eyes clouded with a grief that looked disturbingly human. Veterinarians had come and gone. Specialists flown in at ridiculous fees. Pet behaviorists and trainers parading through the house with confident promises that dissolved the moment Rusty turned his head away from the food they offered. "His organs are fine," the last vet had said that morning, voice careful, almost apologetic. "Sometimes when animals lose someone, they choose to follow. I'm sorry, Mr. Davenport." Those words clung to the wood-paneled walls long after the vet left, hanging in the air like dust motes drifting through the shaft of light that cut across the office. Michael stood in that light now, sleeves rolled, tie abandoned on a chair, staring at his dog as if he could will him back to life. "Rusty," he murmured, the name catching on a throat that hadn't practiced tenderness in a long time. He nudged the silver bowl closer with the tip of his shoe. "Come on, boy. Eat." Rusty didn't move. His only answer was another frayed whine, the sound of a heart that had already decided there was nothing left worth staying for. In the corridor outside, 2 maids passed by with an armful of freshly folded towels, their whispers slipping under the office door. "He cried again all night," one muttered. "I swear this house has been cursed since she died." "Shh," the other hissed. "If Mr. Davenport hears you, he'll—" Her voice vanished as their footsteps carried them away, swallowed by expensive silence and thick carpets that turned everything soft and distant. Michael barely heard them. For a man who had built empires by signing checks and making calls, discovering there was nothing left to buy, not one more option, one more treatment, felt like a quiet kind of terror he didn't know how to name. His phone buzzed on the desk, screen lighting up with a message from his assistant. "Housekeeping agency confirmed. New cleaning lady arrives at 8. Background checked. Low risk." Michael stared at the notification longer than necessary, thumb hovering over the screen. He almost typed cancel it, remembering how quickly the last one had quit. But exhaustion settled over him like a weighted blanket. Too heavy to fight. Let the agency send whoever they wanted. People were always replaceable. At the back entrance of the mansion, where staff came and went unseen, Faith stood clutching the strap of a faded handbag. Toes of her second-hand sneakers lined up neatly against the edge of the perfect stone step, as if she were afraid to leave a mark. The mansion towered above her like something pulled out of a glossy magazine. Glass, stone, and shadow, framed by manicured gardens that didn't look real. Faith inhaled slowly, the cold morning air burning her lungs, and reminded herself how much she needed this job. The intercom crackled to life. "Name?" a disembodied voice asked, clipped and impatient. Faith flinched before leaning toward the speaker. Faith Almeida," she replied. "From the agency. I'm here for the cleaning position." A pause followed, long enough for insecurity to creep in and start unpacking its bags. Then the gate buzzed open with a firm metallic click, and the heavy service door swung inward, as if the house itself were deciding whether she was worth letting in. The first person she saw was a woman in a crisp uniform with a clipboard pressed tight to her chest, hair pulled into a bun so severe it seemed to lift the corners of her face. "You're the new one?" the woman asked without smiling. "You're on time, barely. I'm Mrs. Green. We'll see how long you last." Faith lowered her gaze instinctively. She had learned the choreography of invisibility years ago. Speak softly, move quickly, apologize for existing. "Yes, ma'am," she murmured. "I'll do my best." "Mr. Davenport doesn't like noise," Mrs. Green rattled off as she led Faith down the service corridor, heels snapping against tile. "He doesn't like delays. He doesn't like changes. You clean what you're told to clean, and you stay out of the way. You are not here to be noticed." As they walked, a muffled sound slipped through the walls, a low, broken cry that seemed to vibrate in Faith's ribs more than in her ears. Her steps faltered. That wasn't a television or a machine. That was an animal in pain. "Is there a dog?" Faith ventured carefully, voice small. "I heard—" Mrs. Green stopped short and turned, eyes narrowing as if Faith had stepped over an invisible line. "Yes, there's a dog," she snapped. "He's old, he's sick, he bites, and he is absolutely not your concern. You are here to scrub floors and toilets, not to play veterinarian." Heat rushed to Faith's cheeks, shame mixing with something sharper. "I understand," she said quickly, but in the quiet space behind her ribs, something disagreed. She had grown up loving creatures nobody else bothered to see. Skinny strays under bridges, cats hiding in basements, a limp-legged mutt behind her old building who only wagged his tail for her. They reached a linen closet upstairs and Mrs. Green thrust a small key into Faith's palm. "Uniforms are in there. Put one on, tie your hair back, and start with the guest bathrooms on the second floor. You do not go near the office wing. Mr. Davenport is working and the dog is unstable. You let them both be." Like grief was a misbehavior instead of a wound, Faith thought, but she only nodded, fingers closing around the key as if it might disappear if she held it too loosely. 15 minutes later, she stepped into the second-floor hallway in a stiff uniform that smelled faintly of bleach and starch, a bucket in one hand and a rag in the other. Everything gleamed. The air felt filtered, expensive, as if even dust wasn't allowed to live here. She began in the first guest bathroom as instructed, scrubbing already spotless sinks and aligning untouched bottles of soap. Her movements were automatic, her muscles trained by years of cleaning other people's spaces while pretending she didn't have a life of her own. Then she heard it again, that same low, broken sound, longer this time, scraping along her spine like a memory. Rusty's cry pushed through the walls, through the marble, through the careful distance of this house, and found her, her hand stilled on the faucet. In an instant, she was 12 again, standing behind her apartment building, slipping leftovers to a shivering mutt tied to a pipe because his owner didn't want him inside after the baby came. She remembered the way his eyes had begged for something she didn't have words for yet. "Please don't leave me alone in this. You are not here to interfere," she whispered to herself in the silent bathroom. "You're here to work. You cannot lose this job." Still, her feet were already moving, carrying her to the doorway, then out into the hushed hallway, each step guided by that broken sound, until, as she drew closer to the forbidden wing, Rusty's crying suddenly faltered into a fragile, listening silence, as if somewhere behind a closed door an old dog had just realized he was no longer alone. Faith stopped at the corner where the polished hallway turned into a darker, quieter passage. The air changed there, less of the artificial citrus from the cleaning supplies, more of something older, paper, leather, and the faint, comforting smell of dog. Her fingers tightened around the handle of the bucket. She knew this was probably exactly the boundary Mrs. Green meant when she said office wing. The sensible part of her whispered, "Turn around, go back, scrub the sink again if you have to." But then Rusty whimpered. The sound was softer this time, more like a question than a cry, hesitant, hopeful, the way a heart sounds when it is almost done trying, but not quite. It pulled at something deep in her chest that had nothing to do with protocols or paychecks. She took one careful step forward, then another. The floor didn't creak beneath her weight. The mansion was too perfect for that, but the quiet seemed to lean in, listening, as if even the walls were surprised she'd come this far. At the very end of the corridor, a door stood slightly ajar. Through the narrow gap, she saw a sliver of warm light cutting across a darker room. The whimper came from behind it, followed by the smallest thud, maybe a tail brushing against the floor or a paw scraping weakly. Faith swallowed. She could always pretend she got lost, that she was new, that she heard something and wanted to make sure everything was safe. There were worse sins than caring too much, she thought. She shifted the bucket to the other hand and lifted her free one, knuckles hovering inches from the wood. Before she could knock, a low voice drifted from inside, rough like it wasn't used to speaking gently. "I know, Rusty," the voice murmured. "I know you miss her. So do I." The words struck Faith in the gut. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it, like the sentence had been stitched together with threads of exhaustion, guilt, and a grief he had no idea what to do with. She didn't need to see him to know it was Michael Davenport. She had seen his face online when the agency mentioned the job, headlines about his companies, stock photos of his suits and his serious expression, always serious. She hadn't expected his voice to sound like that, though, like someone who had forgotten how to rest. "Please," he whispered to the dog. "Eat for me, old man. Don't make me lose you too." The silence afterward stretched so long it was almost painful. Faith held her breath without meaning to. Rusty didn't move. The air in the corridor grew dense with unspoken goodbyes. Her knuckles brushed the door by accident, the lightest tap, a sound so small it might as well have been a sigh. But it was enough. The crying stopped. Inside the room, Rusty's ears twitched. His head lifted a fraction, nose quivering, catching something new beneath the familiar layers of cologne, paper, and grief. A different scent slipped in under the door. Cheap laundry detergent, a trace of bus exhaust, and the softest hint of warm skin and nerves. Michael frowned and glanced toward the door. It hadn't opened. No one had announced themselves. Yet Rusty was pushing himself up, every movement slow and shaky, as if drawn by a magnet only he could feel. The old dog took one unsteady step, then another. His paws clicked softly against the hardwood, nails a little too long because he hadn't cooperated during his last grooming. His breathing was ragged, but purposeful. He moved toward the sliver of light at the doorway and sniffed, nose pressed close to the gap. "Rusty?" Michael straightened in his chair, hope and fear colliding in his chest. "What is it, boy?" On the other side of the door, Faith froze. She felt the presence on the other side as surely as Rusty smelled her. The faint exhale, the curious rustle of fur, the dry warmth of a tired animal searching for something it couldn't name. She lowered herself slowly, setting the bucket down as gently as if she were placing it inside a church. Knees bending, she crouched until she was level with the doorknob, heart thudding, hand hovering near the wood but not touching it. She didn't dare intrude more than that. "Hey," she whispered, barely audible even to herself. It was a sound more than a word, a note of tenderness she'd used 100 times on frightened strays. "It's okay, I hear you." Rusty's nose pressed harder against the crack of the door. His tail, limp for days, twitched once. Then again, a tiny, uncertain wave that felt like the first fragile leaf on a tree after winter. Michael's breath caught. He hadn't seen that tail move in 3 days. "Rusty?" he repeated, pushing his chair back. The wheels rolled over the rug and he stood, watching as the old dog gathered what little strength he had and leaned his weight toward the door, eyes focused and alert in a way they hadn't been since she died. Faith's fingers curled against her palms, nails digging just enough to anchor her. She could hear movement inside now. Footsteps, the soft exhale of a man standing too quickly. But her attention was locked on the dog she still hadn't seen, feeling his desperation as if it were her own. "You're not alone," she mouthed again, voice still too quiet to be called sound. Somewhere in her memory, she could feel the weight of a scrawny mutt's head in her lap years ago, the way he finally relaxed after weeks of shaking. Animals, she knew, understood the language of hearts long before words. The door swung open. Faith rocked back on her heels, almost losing her balance. Standing inches away was Michael Davenport himself, tall, dark hair tousled like he'd been dragging his hands through it all night. The first 2 buttons of his shirt undone, sleeves pushed to his elbows. His eyes were sharp, ice blue, and bloodshot, but at that moment they were more startled than intimidating. Between them, planted firmly like a frail, furry guard, stood Rusty. The old dog's legs trembled, but he remained upright. His head turned not toward Michael, but toward the unfamiliar girl in the too big uniform, the one whose eyes were wide with apology and concern. Rusty's nose quivered again, and this time, his tail made a small, unmistakable wag. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. The only sound was Rusty's labored breathing and the distant, steady ticking of the antique clock downstairs. I'm so sorry," Faith blurted, words tumbling over themselves. "I was cleaning the hallway and I heard him, and I know I'm not supposed to be here, but he sounded so." Her gaze dropped to Rusty, and her voice softened without her permission. "So tired." Michael followed her eyes. Rusty had inched closer, drawn toward the trembling warmth in her voice. The old dog's nose touched the cuff of Faith's uniform, inhaling deeply, as if cataloging every piece of who she was. Fear, kindness, exhaustion, and a familiar ache of being small in a world built for bigger people. To Michael, it was like watching someone walk across thin ice he'd been told would never hold again. For days, Rusty hadn't responded to anyone. Not to food, not to treats, not even to Michael himself. Now at the sight of a stranger, a cleaning lady of all people, Rusty was fighting to stand. "You heard him from the hallway?" Michael asked, tone edged with disbelief and something close to accusation, as if caring too much were an offense. Faith nodded, swallow visible in her throat. "Yes, sir. Animals cry differently when they're just complaining and when they're done." The last word fell softly, heavy with understanding. "He doesn't sound like he's complaining." Rusty nudged her hand. The contact sent a small shock up her arm. His fur was rough and a little unkempt, his body too thin, but his eyes were cloudy pools of hurt and loyalty, like he'd been standing guard over someone's pain for too long and didn't know how to rest. Very slowly, as if she were reaching for something holy, Faith lifted her hand and let him sniff her fingers properly. Rusty let out a low, breathy sound that wasn't quite a cry anymore. If anything, it sounded like relief. Michael watched. Something cold and rigid in the center of his chest cracking imperceptibly. "He hasn't gotten up like that for anyone in days," he said quietly. More to himself than to her. Not for the vet. Not for me. Faith didn't look at him right away. Her eyes stayed on Rusty as she whispered, "That's because they were here to fix him. He thinks he's the one who failed." She stroked the side of his neck, fingers finding the spot behind his ear where tension lived. "But he's just grieving, aren't you, boy?" Rusty closed his eyes at her touch, leaning into it like someone starving for warmth. His tail thumped once against the floor. In that moment, something small, but undeniably miraculous, happened in the middle of that office doorway. An old dog who had chosen to stop caring about the world chose very quietly to care again. And for the first time in a long while, Michael Davenport looked at another human being, not as an employee, not as a problem to solve, but as a mystery he suddenly desperately needed to understand. "Who are you?" he asked, voice low, curiosity threading through the exhaustion. Faith finally lifted her gaze to his, timid but steady. "I'm the new cleaning lady, sir," she replied. "My name is Faith." Rusty, as if approving of the introduction, nudged her again and let out a soft, hopeful huff, like a fragile promise that, for tonight at least, he would try not to give up. Rusty's soft huff lingered in the air like a fragile ribbon of hope. Faith kept her hand still, letting the old dog guide the touch instead of forcing it. She had learned long ago that wounded animals, whether they had 4 legs or 2, needed permission, not pressure. Michael stood close enough for her to feel the warmth radiating from his presence, but not close enough to invade her space. Still, she sensed him watching her the way someone watches a miracle they don't know how to believe in. Rusty nudged her wrist again, then slowly sat, his legs folding with effort but not collapsing as they had the past few days. His panting eased. His shoulders sank, not in defeat this time, but in release. Faith swallowed a knot in her throat. "Can I?" She gestured faintly toward Rusty's head. Michael blinked as if the idea of asking permission for anything in his own house felt foreign. "If he's letting you," he murmured, voice quieter than she expected, "then I suppose you can." She stroked Rusty gently, fingertips tracing the thinning fur behind his ears. The dog exhaled a long, trembling breath and melted a little closer to her. Michael's jaw tightened. "He hasn't relaxed like that since..." His voice cracked at the end. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Faith lowered her gaze respectfully. She didn't pry. She didn't offer empty condolences. She simply stayed in the moment with Rusty, grounding him, grounding herself. Michael cleared his throat. "Did Mrs. Green tell you to stay away from this wing?" Her shoulders tensed. "Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to cause trouble. I heard him crying and I just..." "You just what?" She hesitated, fingers stilling in Rusty's fur. "I couldn't ignore it." Michael stared at her, the answer hitting him harder than she intended. He didn't know whether to reprimand her or thank her. No one in the house had said anything like that in months. "Most people ignore what hurts," Faith continued softly, still petting Rusty, "especially when it isn't theirs." Michael exhaled slowly. Something old and sharp in him twisted. Guilt, grief, the echo of a home that used to be full of laughter. Rusty shifted, leaning more heavily against Faith. She braced him gently, her knees sinking to the floor to support his weight. It felt like holding a heartbreak that had finally stopped fighting. "He's underweight," she murmured, "and dehydrated." "We've tried everything," Michael said. "Every food, every specialist." Faith shook her head. "You tried things, but he needs someone." For a second, Michael forgot to breathe. Rusty licked Faith's knuckles, just once, weak but deliberate. Michael's throat tightened at the sight. She smiled, small and warm. "Hey, old boy, you're still here? You didn't give up." Michael's defenses faltered. Rusty had never responded to strangers. He barely tolerated most staff, but now the dog was practically in this girl's lap. "Why you?" he asked, not accusing, genuinely puzzled. "What did you do?" Faith shook her head. "Nothing special. I just listened." Before he could respond, Rusty shifted again and let out a soft, hungry sound, more like a question than a need. Faith's eyebrows lifted. "Mr. Davenport, I think he wants food." Michael blinked. "That's impossible. He hasn't wanted food in..." Rusty nudged Faith's hand toward the hallway with unmistakable insistence. Michael's eyes widened. Are you saying he wants to follow you? Faith looked helplessly from Rusty to the hallway, unsure if she should move. I don't want to overstep. Rusty made the decision for her. He took one shaky step toward her, then another. Faith gasped softly. He's trying. Michael stepped back automatically, letting the dog pass. It felt unreal, watching his old companion who had been lying in the dark for days suddenly finding the strength to walk for a girl he'd just met. Rusty pressed his head gently against Faith's knee, asking silently for her to lead the way. Faith placed her hand over his back, steadying him. Easy, easy, sweetheart. I've got you. Something about the way she said sweetheart made Michael's chest ache. Faith, he said quietly, I don't know what you're doing, but don't stop. She nodded once, not confident, determined. Together they guided Rusty down the hall. Michael followed a step behind, watching in disbelief as Faith moved with the instinct of someone born to care for the broken. Her touch was gentle but sure, her pace slow but steady, her presence somehow soft enough to soothe and strong enough to support. Rusty leaned on her the whole way, each step painful but purposeful. When they reached the kitchen, the dog paused, sniffed the air, and looked up at Faith as if waiting for her to choose something. What does he usually eat? She asked. Michael rubbed the back of his neck. Premium canned food. Vet recommended. He hasn't touched any of it. Faith knelt by a cabinet and pulled out a can, reading the label with a frown. This is too rich, his stomach's probably upset. Michael stared. You know about dog diets? She shrugged. My neighbor's dog got sick once. I helped. Hired a vet? He asked. No. I watched him, listened to him, held him, learned him, like she was doing now. She opened the fridge, finding plain boiled chicken inside, likely meal prep from the chef. She hesitated. Can I? Michael nodded. Take anything you need. Faith shredded a small piece of chicken with her fingers, softening it, warming it in her palms, making it smell more like food and less like something clinical. She held it out. Rusty sniffed. He hesitated. His mouth quivered. And then, very slowly, trembling, he ate it. Michael's hand flew to his mouth. His eyes shone with an emotion Faith didn't dare identify. He ate, Michael whispered. He actually… Faith, he… Rusty licked her fingers. Faith exhaled shakily. There's more where that came from, old boy. Take your time. Michael turned away for a moment, brushing a hand through his hair, jaw tight. Relief hit him so hard it hurt. When he turned back, his eyes softened on Faith in a way that made her look down quickly, cheeks warm. So, Michael said, voice rough, what exactly did you do? Faith glanced up, shy but honest. I didn't fix him, sir, she murmured. I just showed up. Rusty curled against her leg, proving her right. And for the first time in a long time, the mansion didn't feel as cold. Rusty rested his chin on Faith's knee, his breath warm and uneven, but calmer than it had been in days. Faith stayed kneeling beside him, her fingers lightly combing through his fur to loosen knots the groomer had been unable to touch. The old dog leaned into her as if every ounce of comfort he'd lost was suddenly found right there, in her quiet presence. Michael stood a few feet away, arms crossed, not defensive but stunned, as though the ground he stood on had shifted. He kept watching Rusty's every movement, half afraid that this small miracle would vanish if he blinked. Faith broke the silence first, her voice soft. He's not just grieving, he's scared. Michael's expression tightened. Scared of what? Faith hesitated. She didn't want to step out of place. She was just a cleaning lady after all. Who was she to interpret anything in this house? But Rusty sighed and nudged her gently, as if giving her permission to be brave. She looked up at Michael. Sometimes animals stop eating when they think they're going to be left behind. Michael flinched like she'd struck him. Faith looked down again quickly, regretting the words. She didn't mean to expose anything. His loss was written in every corner of this mansion, but she hadn't meant to touch the wound so directly. She tried to soften it. It's no one's fault, they're sensitive, they feel the house, they feel the silence. Michael inhaled slowly, his jaw clenching. This house hasn't been the same since… He didn't finish. His voice simply faded, dissolving into the air like smoke. Faith nodded gently. He's been waiting for someone to talk to him. Michael's eyebrows lifted. I've been talking to him. Faith hesitated. I mean, someone who talks like this. She placed a hand over Rusty's chest and spoke softly, almost in a whisper. You're a good boy. You're trying your best. You're not alone. At the sound of her voice, Rusty's tail thumped twice on the floor. Michael stared, eyes narrowing slightly, not in anger but in bewildered recognition. He hadn't realized how rarely gentleness had lived in these walls lately. Not even his own voice carried that softness. The chef appeared at the far end of the kitchen, halting mid-step when he saw the scene. "Mr. Davenport, is everything—" "Oh." His eyes widened. "He's eating?" Michael nodded faintly. "Yes." Faith added quickly. "Just a little. That's enough for now." The chef's shoulders dropped in relief. "Thank God. We've all been, well, we've been worried." He cleared his throat awkwardly. "Do you need anything else, sir?" Michael shook his head. "No, we're fine." Faith felt Rusty shift his weight again, his body trembling with the effort of standing. She guided him until he lay down gently near her feet. Michael watched her like he couldn't understand how she knew instinctively what to do. After a few quiet minutes, Rusty fell asleep, deeply, for the first time in nights. Faith exhaled slowly, brushing a hand over his shoulder with tenderness that looked like prayer. Michael stepped closer. "I don't understand this," he murmured. He wouldn't let anyone near him. Faith looked at Rusty's sleeping form. "He let me because he needed someone who wasn't trying." Michael blinked. "Trying?" She nodded, still in that shy, careful tone. Everyone else came in with big intentions. Fixing him, saving him, forcing him to get better. She lowered her gaze. "But sometimes broken things just want you to sit with them." Michael's chest tightened again. Her words hit too close. Faith didn't look up when she added softly, "And sometimes, people want the same thing." Michael swallowed. She said it like she knew, like she'd lived it. He studied her quietly, this girl with the cheap uniform and shy voice who had somehow walked into his house and unraveled knots he'd spent months ignoring. "You understand loss," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Faith kept her eyes on Rusty. "Yes, sir, I do." Michael wanted to ask what she meant, what she'd been through, how someone her age could speak like someone who'd lived several lives already. But he sensed that pushing would make her retreat like a frightened deer, so he simply nodded, accepting the silence she offered. A sudden vibration buzzed from Michael's phone. He glanced at the screen and frowned. A name appeared. "Vanessa." He declined the call with a tight jaw. Faith pretended not to notice. Rusty stirred at the sharp sound of the notification that followed the ended call. Faith gently laid a hand on his back, soothing him with a soft murmur. The dog settled again instantly. Michael watched, stunned. "He trusts you." Faith didn't lift her head. "He's just lonely. That makes two of us." Michael muttered, too low for her to hear. But she did hear. Her eyes flicked up, surprised, but she lowered them quickly again, as if afraid to cross a line. Michael cleared his throat and tried to sound composed. "Faith, how long have you been working with animals?" "Oh, I'm not a professional, sir," she said quickly. "I just grew up with a lot of strays around my neighborhood. I used to feed them, care for them when no one else did." "That's more than most people do," Michael replied. Faith shrugged, almost embarrassed. "They didn't have anyone. I guess I just felt like I knew how that feels." Michael froze. It wasn't just the words. It was the simplicity with which she said them, like someone stating the time. He suddenly understood why Rusty had chosen her. "Faith," he said slowly, "I think you may have just saved his life." She shook her head immediately. "No, sir, I only—" "Don't downplay it," he cut in gently. "I know the difference between coincidence and whatever this is." Faith's cheeks warmed. "I didn't do anything special." But she had. Everyone in the room knew it. Rusty shifted again, pressing one paw toward her foot. A silent anchor, like he didn't want her to go anywhere. Michael saw it, felt it, understood it. "Faith," he said quietly, "would you stay with him for a while longer?" She blinked, unsure. I don't want to overstep." "You're not," Michael said softly. "I'm asking." Faith looked down at Rusty, whose breathing had deepened into peaceful sleep. Then, "Yes, sir, I'll stay." Michael exhaled. Relief, gratitude, something else he didn't want to name. He pulled out a chair and sat down near them, not too close, not too far. The three of them stayed there in the warm kitchen light. A grieving man, a timid girl, and the old dog who had finally stopped crying. And for the first time in months, the mansion felt alive again. Rusty slept so deeply that the sound of his breathing softened the entire kitchen, turning the cold marble floors into something almost tender. Faith stayed kneeling beside him, one hand resting lightly along his shoulder. She didn't move much, afraid to disrupt the peace he had fought so hard to find. Michael sat across from them at the kitchen table, elbows on his knees, eyes fixed on Rusty as though witnessing a miracle unfold in slow motion. He had spent sleepless nights pacing halls, calling specialists, begging the universe for one more chance with the dog who had been with him through every chapter of his adult life. He never expected the answer to come in the shape of a timid cleaning girl with soft hands and eyes full of empathy. "How did you know what he needed?" Michael finally asked, voice low in the quiet room. Faith brushed her thumb gently across Rusty's ear. "I didn't know," she murmured. "I just listened." Michael studied her. Not many people do that. Faith's cheeks warmed. She kept her gaze on Rusty. "People don't listen to girls like me, sir. Maybe that's why I learned to listen to everything else." Michael's chest tightened. For a moment he saw her, not as an employee, not as a figure on the payroll, but as a person with an inner world shaped by struggle and softness. He opened his mouth to say something, but footsteps approached the kitchen entry. Mrs. Green appeared, her expression tightening at the sight before her. Faith kneeling on the floor, the millionaire sitting nearby, the old dog asleep with Faith's hand draped protectively over him. "What?" Mrs. Green said sharply. "Is going on here?" Faith froze. Michael straightened but said nothing yet. Mrs. Green walked closer, her voice tightening with each step. "Faith, you were assigned to the upstairs bathrooms. You were explicitly instructed not to enter the office wing. And now I find you in the kitchen sitting on the floor. She's helping Rusty." Michael cut in, voice calm but edged with warning. Mrs. Green paused mid-scold. "Sir, you heard me?" Michael said. "Rusty hasn't eaten or slept for days. She got him to do both." Mrs. Green blinked, clearly unsure how to respond. Faith lowered her gaze, cheeks burning. "I'm sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to ignore your directions. I heard him crying and—" Mrs. Green scoffed. "The dog cries every night. That's hardly—" Rusty stirred beside Faith at the sharp tone, his ears twitching. Faith instinctively placed both hands on his back to reassure him, her voice a gentle whisper. "It's okay, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." The dog relaxed instantly. Mrs. Green's eyes widened. Michael's narrowed. He stood slowly, smoothing his shirt sleeves. "Mrs. Green, from now on, Faith will assist with Rusty. She'll work wherever he is." Faith looked up, startled. "Sir, I don't want to take someone's job." "You're not," Michael said firmly. "You're doing what none of us could." Mrs. Green pressed her lips together. "Sir, she's new. She doesn't understand the rules of the household yet, and the staff has protocols." "I don't care about protocols," Michael cut in. "I care about my dog." Mrs. Green swallowed, bowing her head slightly. "Of course, sir. As you wish." She backed out of the kitchen, stiff and disapproving, but too professional to argue further. Faith watched her go, shoulders tense. "She's going to hate me," she whispered. Michael sat back down. "Mrs. Green hates everyone. It's her hobby." Faith covered her mouth to hide a startled laugh. It was a small sound, soft and sweet, and it hit Michael like sunlight cracking through a storm cloud. Rusty shifted in his sleep and placed his paw over Faith's foot. She looked down at him with an expression so tender it softened every sharp edge in the room. "You can move closer if you want," she said shyly. "He likes when someone's near." Michael hesitated. He hadn't sat near Rusty in days. Afraid of hurting him, afraid of seeing him so weak, afraid of facing the possibility of losing him. But Faith's gentle encouragement nudged him forward. He moved to the floor, sitting beside Rusty on the opposite side of Faith. Rusty's eyes opened halfway. When he saw Michael, his tail thumped weakly twice. Michael inhaled sharply. "Hey, buddy," he murmured. "I didn't think I'd see you do that again." Faith smiled quietly. "He knows you're here. He just didn't know how to ask for you." Michael's throat tightened. "I haven't been my best lately." "People grieve too, sir," Faith whispered. "Not just dogs." Michael looked at her, really looked, and saw truth in her words. A truth he'd been running from. Rusty scooted closer, nudging his head gently against Michael's knee. Faith placed a hand on Rusty's shoulder, the other resting lightly on his paw. "Grief makes us hide," she said. "But he doesn't want to hide anymore." Michael swallowed hard. "And you made him come out?" She shook her head shyly. "I just showed him he wasn't alone." Michael stared at her, his voice barely more than breath. "Faith, when was the last time someone did that for you?" Her eyes flickered up, startled by the question, then down again, as if afraid to be seen too clearly. "I don't know," she whispered. Rusty made a small noise, pushing his weight onto both of them, bridging the gap. The three of them sat together on the tile floor, Michael with his grief, Faith with her gentle resilience, Rusty with his fragile heart stitched together by their presence. Outside, the world continued its frantic pace. Inside this warm circle on the cold floor, time softened and slowed. Michael exhaled deeply, as if for the first time in months. "Faith," he said quietly, I think I'd really like you to stay in this house. Not just as staff, as someone Rusty needs." Faith blinked, eyes wide. "Are you sure? I don't want to disappoint you." "You already did the opposite," Michael said. "You gave him something no one else could." Her breath trembled. "I'm glad he trusts me." Michael softened. "I'm starting to trust you too." Faith's heart fluttered, surprised, unsure, but warm. Rusty lifted his head just long enough to look at them both, as if approving. The beginning of something quietly extraordinary settled over them. Not romance yet, not friendship yet, but a connection woven out of grief, gentleness, and the old dog who finally slept without crying. The kitchen lights dimmed automatically as the afternoon turned into early evening, leaving warm amber tones reflecting off the countertops. Rusty was still asleep, his breathing slow, steady, peaceful. Faith had shifted to sit more comfortably, her back against a cabinet, but she refused to move too far from Rusty's side. Michael remained on the floor as well. He hadn't sat on a kitchen floor since. He couldn't remember when. Probably never. But somehow sitting here beside Faith, beside Rusty, felt more grounding than the leather chairs in his office ever had. Faith glanced at him shyly. "If you need to go work, sir, I can stay with him." Her offer was gentle, humble, but underneath it was something else. Genuine worry for both of them. Michael shook his head slowly. "Work can wait." Faith blinked, surprised. Men like him didn't pause their empires for anything. The fact that he was choosing to sit on the floor beside a cleaning lady and a sick dog felt impossible. But here he was. "I haven't stopped in months," he admitted. His voice wasn't proud or self-aggrandizing, just tired. "Sometimes it feels like if I keep moving I won't have to think." Faith lowered her gaze. "Some people move to outrun their sadness. And you?" Michael asked softly. "Do you outrun yours?" She hesitated. "I can't afford to outrun anything, so I kind of just carry it." Michael's breath stilled. He looked at her with a kind of quiet astonishment. "You talk like someone twice your age." Faith smiled a little, embarrassed. "Life teaches fast when it has to." Rusty twitched in his sleep, leaning heavier against Faith. She steadied him, her touch instinctive. Michael watched the movement, watched her, and felt something warm and unsettling opening inside him. Admiration, maybe. Respect. A kind of tenderness he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long time. He cleared his throat. "You said you grew up around strays?" Faith nodded. "Yeah. I lived in a neighborhood where people abandoned animals like they were trash. I used to sit with them behind the building, feed them leftovers, talk to them." Michael tilted his head. "Talk to them?" She flushed. "It sounds silly." "No," he said quickly, voice low. "It doesn't." Faith's fingers continued stroking Rusty's fur. "Animals don't judge you. They don't ask who you are or what you have. They just feel you, and they know when someone else is hurting." Her voice grew quieter. "Sometimes, they were the only ones who noticed I was hurting too." Michael exhaled sharply, as though the honesty in her words pierced through an armor he didn't realize he still wore. Faith looked down, cheeks warm. "Sorry, that was too much." "No," he said again. "It wasn't." Silence drifted between them, not heavy, not awkward, but soft. The kind of silence that allows breathing to deepen, walls to lower, hearts to listen. Rusty suddenly shifted, making a faint sound. Faith bent toward him. "Shh, it's okay, sweetheart. I'm here." Michael watched her, mesmerized. "You're incredible with him." She shook her head. "I'm not incredible, sir. I'm just gentle." "Gentle is rare," Michael murmured. The words hung in the space between them, a subtle confession slipping out before he could stop it. Faith's breath caught. She tried to look away, but her eyes met his by accident, and he held the moment. Long enough for her pulse to stutter, but not long enough to frighten her. Then a loud clatter echoed down the hallway, the sound of something dropping into a metal bin. Rusty's ears perked, and he tensed, memories of the past few days flickering in his weary body. Faith placed a calming hand over him. "You're safe, I promise." Her tone was low, warm, steady, and Rusty immediately relaxed again. Michael ran a hand through his hair. "No one in this house ever sounded like that." Faith blinked. "Like what?" "Like someone who means it," he said. She looked down, eyes soft but uncertain. She wasn't used to being recognized, seen for her strengths. It made her shy, almost uncomfortable. Rusty's body shifted again, this time in Michael's direction. He opened one eye, looked at Faith, then nudged her hand toward Michael's knee. Faith froze. Michael stared. Rusty nudged again, insistent, determined, as if trying to say, "Not just her. You too. You need this too." Faith hesitated, her hand hovering uncertainly between them. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable." Michael shook his head, surprising himself. "You're not." She reached out slowly, placing her hand lightly on Rusty's fur, right where Rusty's head pressed against Michael's knee. For a moment, all three of them were connected. Michael felt Faith's touch, barely there, feather soft, yet it hit him with a force he didn't expect. He hadn't felt another person's comforting presence since his wife passed. Not like this. Not tender, not unrequested, not honest. Faith pulled her hand back quickly, startled by the intensity she felt too. Sorry, sir, I didn't mean." "It's okay," Michael interrupted, voice low. They both looked away at the same time, heartbeats unsteady. Rusty huffed softly, pleased. Michael let out a quiet breath. "He wants you to stay near him. Tonight." Faith's eyes widened. "Tonight?" Michael nodded. "He sleeps better when you're here. And honestly, so do I." Faith clasped her hands together nervously. "I don't want to cross boundaries." "You aren't," Michael said softly. "This house has had enough boundaries." She swallowed, unsure. Rusty nudged her again, as if saying, "Stay." Michael added gently, "Faith, would you stay for dinner? You won't have to eat with the staff." Faith froze. "I've never eaten at a table like yours," she whispered. Michael's expression softened. "Then tonight you will." She looked between him and Rusty, between the man learning how to feel again and the dog learning how to live again. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll stay." Michael exhaled, relieved. "Good." Faith stroked Rusty's fur once more. For the first time in years, the mansion seemed to breathe, and for the first time in her life someone had asked Faith to stay. The kitchen slowly shifted from warm golds to deeper, duskier tones as evening settled across the mansion. Rusty slept between them, his body rising and falling in a rhythm that felt like a fragile promise. A dog who had nearly given up now choosing to rest, because for the first time in days, he felt safe. Faith stayed beside him, her hand occasionally smoothing the fur behind his ears. Every time she tried to stand, Rusty would shift anxiously, so she kept still, whispering, "I'm here," in a voice that soothed both dog and man. Michael rose to his feet reluctantly, brushing the dust from his slacks. "I'll tell the chef to set a place for you," he said softly. Faith looked up at him, startled. "At the main table?" "Yes?" He said it without hesitation. Her lips parted. She looked almost frightened, as if stepping into a world too bright might burn her. "But, Mr. Davenport, I'm staff." "You're a guest," he corrected gently. Faith's cheeks warmed. She lowered her gaze to Rusty. "Only because of him." Michael paused. "Faith, Rusty trusts you. I'm beginning to trust you too." She swallowed hard, unable to look at him. Trust was not something she was used to receiving. Certainly not from men like him, men whose shadows were longer than her entire life. "I'll stay, if you're sure," she whispered. "I am." He left the kitchen then, but his footsteps slowed once he turned the corner, as if reluctant to walk away from the strange comfort forming behind him. Faith didn't notice. Her attention was on Rusty. A soft voice echoed from the doorway moments later. "Miss?" Faith turned to see the chef, the same man who'd earlier thanked God Rusty had eaten. His expression was kinder now, his shoulders relaxed. "I'll prepare something mild," he said. "Nothing too heavy. Do you have dietary preferences?" Faith blinked as though he'd spoken in another language. "Dietary? Oh, no sir, I eat anything." The chef smiled faintly. "Good. I'll make something gentle on the stomach. You look like you could use a warm meal." Her throat tightened. No one asked her things like that. Not at home. Not anywhere. "Thank you," she whispered. When he left, Faith looked down at Rusty again. "You must be used to fancy food, huh?" she whispered, stroking his head. "Me, I grew up eating whatever we could put together. Sometimes just bread and butter." Rusty made a soft noise in his sleep, as if responding. Faith smiled faintly. "Yeah, I know. We both learned to make do." Minutes passed in quiet companionship until Michael returned. His shirt sleeves still rolled, tie still gone, hair slightly disheveled in a way that made him look less like a billionaire and more like a tired man finally allowed to stop pretending. He carried a plush dog blanket in one arm. When Faith noticed, she gently lifted Rusty's head so Michael could slide the blanket beneath him. Their hands almost brushed. Both froze. Faith's breath stuttered. Michael's chest tightened. He cleared his throat softly. He should be comfortable. Faith nodded, still flustered. Thank you, sir. Michael sat again, this time closer. Not too close to frighten her, but close enough that she could feel his presence. Steady, grounding. For a few moments they watched Rusty sleep. The air filled with a gentle stillness neither wanted to break. But eventually Michael spoke, voice low. Faith, may I ask you something? She stiffened, eyes falling to her lap. Yes, sir. You said earlier that animals were the only ones who noticed when you were hurting. His voice softened. What did you mean by that? Faith swallowed hard. She wasn't used to anyone asking her questions about herself. She wasn't used to mattering. She kept her hands on Rusty as she answered. I grew up in a place where pain was normal. No one had time to care about sadness. Her voice grew thin. People were busy surviving. You didn't complain. You didn't cry. You just kept going. Michael watched her carefully, something protective sparking behind his eyes. Faith continued. But animals notice when you're quiet, when you're scared, when you're tired. They see you. She smiled sadly. Sometimes that's enough. Michael exhaled slowly. Faith, you deserved more than that. Her chest tightened, and she blinked quickly as if trying to push away tears she didn't want him to see. It's okay. I'm used to being invisible. But she wasn't invisible now. Michael's gaze didn't waver. Not cold, not distant, not dismissive. He looked at her like she mattered. Faith, he said quietly, you're not invisible here. Her breath hitched. A long silence followed. A silence made of understanding, not avoidance. Rusty stirred again, lifting his head. Michael reached out instinctively, but the old dog nudged Faith's hand instead. She smiled softly and rubbed his chest. He likes you, Michael murmured. A lot. Faith's cheeks flushed. I'm glad. He's special. He's my best friend, Michael said, his voice breaking slightly at the edges. Faith nodded gently. You're his too. Michael rubbed his face with his palms, suddenly overwhelmed. He stopped crying because of you, he whispered. He stopped crying because someone finally listened. She corrected softly. Michael looked at her then, really looked, and for the first time since his wife died, something cracked open in him that he hadn't realized was sealed shut. Connection, respect, warmth, hope. A knock sounded at the doorway. The chef stepped inside. Dinner is ready, sir. He glanced kindly at Faith. Miss, your plate is out too. Faith nodded, grateful. Thank you. Michael stood and extended a hand to help her up, then stopped halfway, unsure if she'd accept. Faith stared at the offered hand. No one had ever offered her one. Not like this. Not with gentleness. Instead of obligation. Slowly, timidly, she placed her hand in his. Michael pulled her up with surprising care, making sure she didn't strain her knees or lose balance. Their hands lingered a moment too long before both pulled away, flustered. Michael cleared his throat. We'll eat just in the next room. Rusty will be able to see us. Faith nodded, smoothing her uniform nervously. Okay. Rusty lifted his head, watching them. It's okay, sweetheart, Faith whispered. We'll be right there. Rusty settled again. Michael gestured toward the dining room. Shall we? For the first time in years, Faith walked beside someone, not behind them. And for the first time since his wife's funeral, Michael didn't feel alone walking into dinner. The dining room glowed with soft, warm lighting, dim enough to feel intimate, bright enough to feel safe. The long oak table stretched across the room like a polished river, but tonight only two places were set, one at the head where Michael always sat, and another to his right. Faith stared at the second place setting, confused. Sir, I thought I'd sit farther away. Michael shook his head. This is fine. Are you sure? I don't want anyone thinking. Let them think whatever they want, he said simply. I'm not ashamed to be seen eating with someone who just saved Rusty. Faith's cheeks warmed deeply. She lowered her gaze as she approached the table, the elegant chair feeling too grand for someone like her. She wasn't used to sitting, only serving. Michael pulled the chair out for her. Her breath froze. No one's ever done that for me, she whispered. He paused behind her. They should have. Faith sat, careful and rigid, afraid of touching anything too expensive. She folded her hands on her lap as the chef brought two plates. A simple, comforting meal. Chicken, rice, steamed vegetables. Nothing ostentatious, nothing intimidating. Faith exhaled in relief. Thank you, she murmured to the chef. You're welcome, miss, he said warmly before leaving. Michael sat beside her, but not directly. Their chairs were angled, giving her space. He seemed aware of her nervousness, trying not to overwhelm her. For a long moment, Faith didn't touch her fork. Michael noticed. "Do you not like it?" "Oh," she startled. "No, sir, it looks amazing. I'm just not used to eating in places like this." "It's just a room," he said softly. She shook her head. "Not to someone like me." Michael watched her carefully. "Someone like you?" Faith hesitated, then shrugged. "Poor, invisible, from the kind of neighborhood people with your kind of house pretend doesn't exist." Michael's jaw tightened, not at her words, but at the truth behind them. "You're not invisible," he said again. "Not to me." Faith's breath stilled. Her eyes flicked up, meeting his for a fragile second before she looked away. She picked up her fork, hands trembling just a little. Michael took a bite of his own food, giving her space to adjust. "You know," he said gently, "you can relax here." She swallowed hard. "I don't know how to relax in places like this, sir." "Try," he murmured, "for tonight." She took her first bite and closed her eyes. The food was warm, comforting, real. Her shoulders loosened without her permission. When she opened her eyes, Michael was watching her with a small, barely there smile. "Good?" She nodded quickly, embarrassed. "Very." Silence settled again, but it wasn't awkward. It was soft, like a blanket laid gently over the room. Michael leaned back slightly. "Faith, why did you take this job?" She blinked. "The cleaning job?" "Yes." She hesitated. "Because I needed it." "I gathered that much," he said gently. "But you had choices, didn't you?" Faith let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Not really. My choices were, take whatever work I could find, or lose the little I have left." Michael's expression shifted, stern, protective, angry at a world that made people like her scrape to survive. "Are you alone?" he asked softly. Faith's throat tightened. "Yes, sir." "How long?" She swallowed. "A long time." Michael didn't push further, but something in him tightened. Something he hadn't felt since he lost his wife. That instinct to protect, to shelter, to make things easier for someone who deserved better. Faith took another bite, calmer now. She glanced toward the kitchen doorway where Rusty's blanket was just barely visible. "He can't sleep without you," Michael murmured. Faith flushed. "It's just a phase. When he gets stronger, he won't need me." Michael studied her. "Maybe he needs you because you don't ask anything from him. You just stay. That's what love is," she whispered. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Her eyes widened as she realized what she'd said. Michael froze. She added quickly, "Not romantic love. I mean, the love animals understand. You know, just being there." Michael let the tension ease. "Still," he said softly, "not many people stay." Faith looked down at her hands. "I've stayed for everyone I've ever cared about, even when it hurt." Michael didn't know why, but hearing that felt like a truth cut deep into his own loneliness. He set his fork down gently. "You're remarkable, Faith," he said quietly. Her breath hitched. "I'm not. I'm just trying my best. That's what makes you remarkable." She swallowed, overwhelmed. Compliments were foreign to her, especially from someone like him, someone she never expected to notice her beyond her utility. They ate in silence for several minutes. Michael finished first, setting his napkin down. "You can take your time," he said. "I'll check on Rusty." Faith stood immediately. "I'll go with you." "You don't have to." "I want to." Michael nodded, touched in a way he didn't fully understand. They walked together toward the kitchen doorway. Rusty lifted his head the moment Faith appeared, tail tapping the blanket softly. Michael exhaled, relieved. "He really is different with you." Faith knelt again, stroking Rusty's cheek. "He's trying, that's all anyone can ask." Michael leaned against the counter, watching them. "Faith, would you consider staying longer tonight? Until he falls asleep again?" Faith hesitated. "If you want me to." "I do," he said quietly. "I don't want him to cry again." Faith nodded. "Then I'll stay." Rusty rested his head in her lap, eyes half closing with trust. Michael watched them for a long, quiet moment. Then he said something even he didn't expect. "Faith, I don't want you to feel alone in this house." Faith froze. "So if you ever need anything, or if someone makes you feel small, you come to me." Her lips parted, breath trembling. "Why?" she whispered. Michael's voice was low, earnest, unguarded. "Because you walked into this house and saved the only family I have left. And because I think you're worth taking care of too." Faith didn't know how to breathe. Rusty sighed contentedly, pressing closer to her. And for the first time in a long, long time, Faith felt like she wasn't just passing through someone else's world. She felt like she belonged. Rusty drifted again into sleep, his head warm and heavy on Faith's lap. Faith sat cross-legged on the kitchen floor, brushing her fingers gently through the fur on his chest, whispering soft, soothing words each time he stirred. Michael leaned against the counter nearby, sleeves rolled, hands in his pockets, watching them as though afraid the moment might vanish if he blinked too long. It struck him how naturally she fit here, not like a guest, not like a stranger, not like staff, like someone who brought warmth with her, simply by existing. Faith looked up shyly. "He's calmer now." Michael nodded. "Because you're here." She lowered her gaze. Compliments always slipped under her skin like heat, foreign, unexpected, overwhelming. Rusty stirred again. Faith bent closer, whispering something Michael couldn't hear. The old dog relaxed instantly. Michael exhaled softly. "I've never seen anything like it." Faith kept her voice low. "It's not magic. He was grieving alone. So was I," Michael murmured. Faith froze, not because she didn't already know, but because hearing him say it aloud felt like stepping onto sacred ground. She lifted her eyes. "You don't have to be alone in it." Michael's throat tightened. No one had said that to him since his wife died. Not once. Everyone either tiptoed around him or avoided the topic entirely, afraid of crossing invisible lines. But Faith didn't fear his pain. She understood it, recognized it, maybe because she carried her own. He stepped forward slowly, as if approaching a frightened animal. "Faith." Before he could finish, footsteps echoed from the hallway, sharp, annoyed steps that snapped the fragile piece in half. Mrs. Green appeared in the doorway, her arms crossed tightly, her expression pinched as though she'd just swallowed a lemon. "Mr. Davenport," she said coldly, "may I speak with you? In private." Faith tensed immediately, instinctively shrinking as though expecting reprimand. Michael didn't move. "If it's about Faith, you can say it here." Mrs. Green pressed her lips together. "Very well." She shot Faith a pointed look before turning back to Michael. "Some of the staff are concerned." "About what?" Michael asked, his voice already cooling. "About boundaries," Mrs. Green said. "About roles, about propriety." Her gaze drifted pointedly to Faith kneeling on the floor beside Michael's dog. Faith felt her stomach drop. Shame prickled at her neck. She knew this look. She'd seen it her whole life. The look people gave her when they thought she'd accidentally stepped somewhere she didn't belong. Michael's jaw tightened. Faith didn't cross any boundaries. Mrs. Green raised an eyebrow. "Sir, she is a cleaning girl. She should not be sitting on the floor of your kitchen like—" Rusty lifted his head abruptly and growled. A low, warning rumble. Faith blinked in shock. Rusty hadn't had the strength to growl at anyone in days. Mrs. Green stepped back, startled. "That dog—" Faith placed a calming hand on Rusty's neck. "It's okay, sweetheart." Rusty's growl softened, but his protective stare didn't leave the housekeeper. Michael stepped forward. "Mrs. Green, if Rusty doesn't trust you, that says more about you than it does about him." Mrs. Green's jaw dropped. "Sir, Rusty hasn't reacted like that to anyone except the people who mistreated him." Faith froze. Mistreated him? Her hand paused on Rusty's fur. Her heart thudded. Mrs. Green stiffened. I don't know what you mean." Michael's eyes narrowed. "Then you have nothing to worry about." His voice lowered, controlled. "Faith stays, as close to Rusty as he needs." Mrs. Green swallowed. "Very well, sir." But her glare toward Faith lingered like a threat before she turned sharply and left. When she was gone, Faith released a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "I should have stayed in the bathroom like she said," she whispered. "I always make trouble without meaning to." Michael crouched beside her, the movement slow, almost tentative. "You didn't make trouble. You helped my dog. You helped me." Faith looked down, insecure. "She'll think I'm trying to step out of my place." Michael's voice softened. "Maybe your place isn't where people like her decided it should be." Faith blinked up at him, stunned by the implication. Rusty nudged her hand again, as if agreeing. Michael's eyes flicked to Rusty. "He sees you, and so do I." Faith's breath trembled. She swallowed the lump in her throat and looked away, brushing her fingers over Rusty's ear. Another long silence fell. Warm, fragile, full. Michael spoke again, voice textured with honesty. "Faith, I want to ask you something important." She looked up slowly. "Yes? Would you consider becoming Rusty's primary caretaker?" Faith's eyes widened, heart thudding. "Me? Yes," Michael said. "You're the only person he responds to." The only one he trusts. Faith shook her head, overwhelmed. But I'm just a cleaning lady. You need someone with training, someone who knows. You know him, Michael interrupted gently. That's worth more than any certificate. Faith's chest tightened painfully. But why me? Michael hesitated. Then quietly, because you have a kind of empathy I've never seen. And because I trust you. Faith's eyes blurred with tears. She tried desperately to blink away. No one had ever said they trusted her. Not in her entire life. Rusty licked her wrist, sealing the decision as though he understood everything happening. Faith whispered, I don't know if I deserve that role. Michael's voice softened even more. Sometimes the people who think they don't deserve trust are the ones who deserve it most. She lowered her head, tears escaping despite her efforts. Thank you, sir. Michael reached out, slowly, carefully, and offered a clean handkerchief. Faith stared at the offered gesture. It was simple, kind, human. She took it with trembling fingers. Michael stayed crouched, level with her, waiting until she steadied her breath. Then he said something that made her heart stop entirely. Faith, you don't have to call me sir. Her eyes widened. He held her gaze. Call me Michael. Her lips parted, unsure, overwhelmed. I don't know if I can. You can, he whispered. If you want to. Faith swallowed hard. The name felt like a boundary crossed. One she didn't want to retreat from. Michael, she whispered. He closed his eyes briefly. The sound of his name on her lips, stronger than any touch. Rusty lifted his head between them, tail tapping weakly, as though blessing whatever shift had begun. And in that moment, the mansion no longer felt like a house of grief. It felt like the place where three lonely souls had, without meaning to, begun to heal one another. The moment Faith whispered Michael, something shifted in the room, quietly, deeply, almost imperceptibly but real. The name sat on her tongue like a fragile secret, and on his ears like warmth he hadn't felt in years. Michael's breath caught, chest tightening with something he couldn't yet name. He hadn't realized how long it had been since someone spoke to him without formality, without distance, without fear. Hearing his own name said softly by someone gentle, someone who saw him, felt like a door opening inside his ribcage. Faith quickly looked down, cheeks burning. I'm sorry if that was... It wasn't, Michael murmured. You can call me that whenever you want. Faith nodded shyly, fingers curling into Rusty's fur to ground herself in something familiar. Rusty, ever attuned to her nervousness, licked her knuckles with a tired, protective sigh. Michael watched the exchange with quiet awe. I meant what I said. I want you to be Rusty's primary caretaker. Faith hesitated. I'm afraid of disappointing you. You won't, Michael said. You already saved him. She opened her mouth to protest, but the sincerity in Michael's eyes stunned her into silence. No one had ever looked at her like she was capable of something important. Rusty shifted again, pushing his paw against Faith's leg. Michael noticed every tiny movement, his heart swelling with a gratitude he could hardly articulate. You know, he began softly. When my wife was alive, Rusty adored her. He followed her everywhere. After she passed, his voice cracked. After she passed, he lost something I couldn't give back. Faith's expression softened, pain flickering behind her eyes. Dogs feel loss as deeply as people do. Michael nodded. I just didn't expect him to find comfort again, especially not with someone he just met. Faith touched Rusty's cheek gently. He didn't just meet me, he heard me. Michael leaned slightly closer. I think I'm starting to hear you too. Faith froze. Her breath trembled in her chest. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them grew warm, charged by a tenderness neither expected, yet neither feared. A soft rustling sound from the hallway broke the spell. The chef appeared quietly, holding a bowl. Something light for Rusty, he said. Warm broth, good for his stomach. Faith smiled. Thank you. Michael accepted the bowl from the chef and kneeled beside Faith, their shoulders almost touching. Let's try giving him a little. Together, they coaxed Rusty awake. His eyes fluttered open. Faith held the bowl carefully, dipping her fingers into the broth before offering a tiny drop to Rusty. Come on, sweetheart, she whispered. Just a taste. Rusty sniffed, hesitated, then licked the broth from her fingers. Michael's eyes widened. He wants more. Faith encouraged him with soft murmurs, dipping her fingers again, gently touching them to Rusty's lips. The old dog licked again, slowly but willingly. Michael whispered, Faith, This is unbelievable. She shook her head. No, it's just patience. It's more than that. Faith blushed, unable to handle the way his voice softened when he spoke to her. They continued feeding Rusty until his eyelids drooped again, satisfied and tired. When he finally rested his head in Faith's lap once more, Michael sat back, exhaling as if a weight had been lifted from him. He rubbed his face with both hands, pushing his hair back. I haven't felt this kind of relief in months, he admitted, his voice raw. Faith smiled timidly. I'm glad I could help. Michael lowered his hands and looked at her. Really, looked at her. You didn't just help, Faith. You changed everything today. Her heart squeezed. I don't think I changed anything. You made my home warm again, he whispered. Faith's breath caught. She looked away quickly, overwhelmed. You're giving me too much credit. I'm giving you the credit you deserve. She chewed her lip, unsure how to hold the weight of his praise. Michael shifted, sitting back against a lower cabinet. Faith, do you know why this house feels so cold? She hesitated, then shook her head slowly. Because I turned it cold, he admitted. After my wife died, I shut down. I shut everyone out, Rusty included. Faith lowered her gaze, but the empathy in her eyes was palpable. Grief can do that. I thought I was protecting myself, he said, but I was drowning, and Rusty was drowning with me. Faith looked at Rusty, her fingers brushing over his ear. He never blamed you. I know, Michael whispered, but I blame myself. Faith's voice softened. You shouldn't. You were doing the best you could with a broken heart. Michael stared at her, stunned by the accuracy of her words. No one had spoken to him like that, not since his wife. No one had understood the quiet ache he carried like a second skin. Rusty nudged Faith's hand again. She smiled and rubbed his head. Michael watched the scene with a gentleness that made her chest tighten. He needs you, he said softly. She looked up. And you? The question hung in the air, delicate as glass. Michael swallowed, the truth rising before he could stop it. I'm starting to need you too. Faith sucked in a breath, stunned, unsure how to respond. The mansion suddenly felt smaller, closer, warmer. Rusty, sensing the shift, curled closer to both of them, tail thumping faintly in approval. Faith lowered her head, overwhelmed. I don't want to cause trouble, she whispered. You're not trouble, Michael said firmly. You're the first good thing that's happened to this house in a long time. Faith blinked fast, her eyes shining. No one had ever told her she was a good thing. Michael's voice dropped to something almost reverent. Faith, thank you. For today. For him. For everything. She looked at him, shy but steady. You're welcome, Michael. He inhaled sharply at the sound of his name on her lips again. So soft, so warm, so healing. Rusty's breathing deepened. Faith gently adjusted the blanket around him. He's sleeping better now. Michael nodded. His eyes lingered on her slow, careful movements, hands that had known struggle, but moved with extraordinary tenderness. What about you? He asked quietly. Are you okay? Faith blinked, startled. People didn't ask her that. Ever. She nodded, though her voice trembled. I am now. Michael exhaled. A small, warm relief. Good. For a while they stayed like that. Two lonely souls sitting close, healing in ways they didn't yet understand. An old dog curled between them like a bridge neither had known they needed. The kitchen had grown quieter, softer, as night pressed its palms against the windows. Only the low hum of the refrigerator and Rusty's calm breathing filled the space. The rest of the mansion was dark, but here, right here, warmth had returned. Faith shifted slightly, careful not to disturb Rusty. Michael noticed immediately. You must be tired, he murmured. Faith shook her head gently. I'm fine. I just don't want to wake him. He sleeps better beside you than he has in days, Michael said. Maybe weeks. Faith looked down at Rusty's gray muzzle, her expression tender. He's had a heavy heart to carry. So have you, Michael replied quietly. Faith's breath trembled, startled by how easily he could see the bruises she kept hidden. Her fingers froze mid-stroke over Rusty's fur. She looked away, swallowing hard. Michael shifted closer, not touching her, but presence deeply intentional. Faith, you don't have to pretend you're okay all the time. She blinked fast. I'm not pretending. He tilted his head. A little. Her eyes glistened, but she forced a small smile. Maybe a little. Michael inhaled gently. Everyone carries something. Rusty, me, and you. Faith nodded faintly. I just don't want to be a burden. Michael's expression softened painfully. You could never be a burden. A tear escaped anyway, a single one, and Faith brushed it away quickly, embarrassed. Sorry, I get emotional when people are kind. Michael's voice dropped to a near whisper. Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people. Faith laughed softly, though her voice wavered. You don't know me well enough to say that. Michael shook his head, eyes steady on hers. I know enough. Faith's cheeks warmed, eyes darting down to Rusty for safety. The dog shifted, placing his paw across both Michael's and Faith's legs, bridging them without knowing. Faith smiled softly. He likes connecting people. He's doing a good job, Michael murmured. Their eyes met again. Something unspoken but unmistakably warm fluttered between them. Suddenly, a faint whimper came from Rusty, not of pain, but of searching. Faith soothed him quickly. I'm here, sweetheart. I'm not going anywhere. Michael watched her with awe. You say that so easily. What? That you won't leave? Faith hesitated. Pain flickered behind her eyes. Because I know what it feels like when someone leaves, and I know what it feels like when someone stays. The second one changes everything. Michael absorbed that quietly, his chest tightening. I'm not used to people staying either, he admitted. Not since her. Faith nodded gently. I'm sorry for your loss. He looked down, his breath catching. Losing her felt like losing the world I was supposed to grow old in. Faith didn't interrupt. She let the silence hold him. Michael continued, voice trembling. I tried to keep going. For Rusty, for my company, for the reputation, the expectations, but it all turned hollow. Everything felt cold. Faith's voice softened. You didn't fail her, Michael. He looked at her, wounded. Didn't I? No, she said firmly, her small voice carrying a surprising strength. You survived. That's not failing. Michael inhaled sharply, emotion tightening his throat. No one had ever said that to him. Not his co-workers, not his friends, not even the therapists he'd tried seeing for 2 sessions before quitting. Faith reached out, not thinking, and touched his hand gently, just a light brush of her fingers over his knuckles. Michael stilled, eyes softening in a way that nearly broke her. Rusty exhaled sleepily, deeply content, sensing the gentle bridge forming. Faith pulled her hand back quickly, flustered. I didn't mean… Sorry, I shouldn't… Michael reached forward slowly, stopping her panic with a quiet gesture of his palm. Faith, you're not doing anything wrong. Her breath stilled. He lowered his hand, but the warmth lingered between them. You're allowed to care. You're allowed to… comfort someone. Faith nodded, overwhelmed, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. Michael watched the movement, something tender stirring in his expression. Have you ever had someone to comfort you? Faith swallowed hard. No, not really. Why? He asked softly. She waited a few seconds, gathering courage. When you come from where I come from, everyone's fighting their own battles. No one has time to look at the quiet girl in the corner. Michael clenched his jaw. Anger, not at her, but at the world, flaring briefly. They should have looked. Faith shook her head. It's okay. I learned to be strong. But strength shouldn't come from being neglected, he whispered. Faith's eyes dropped to Rusty again. Maybe not, but it taught me how to care for others, and it taught me how to spot people who hurt quietly. Michael's breath caught. Like me? Faith looked up, meeting his eyes. Yes. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then quietly, I don't know how you do that. Do what? See things other people miss. Faith gave a shy, sad smile. Because for most of my life I was what people missed. Michael inhaled sharply. The vulnerability in her words, in her eyes, hit him in a way he wasn't prepared for. Faith, he murmured. You're not missed anymore. I see you. Her breath trembled. She looked away, overwhelmed. Michael gently scooted a bit closer, not touching, but near enough that she felt the warmth of him. I don't want you to feel invisible in this house. She nodded quickly, afraid her voice would crack. Thank you. Rusty yawned, stretching out a paw toward Faith's leg, then toward Michael, as if pulling them both closer in his sleep. Michael chuckled softly. He's matchmaking. Faith blushed fiercely. He's just stretching. But Michael's smile was warm, soft, unguarded. Maybe, but he hasn't slept this peacefully since my wife passed, and he only did it after you came. Faith whispered, I'm glad he feels safe. Michael's eyes lingered on her. I feel safer too. Faith looked stunned. Words fled her. She looked down, blinking fast, grateful for Rusty between them because her heart had leapt into her throat. Michael leaned his head back against the cabinet, letting out a shaky breath. You changed today for me, Faith. For Rusty. For this house. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. You changed today for me too, Michael. He closed his eyes briefly, holding onto the sound of his name on her lips like a lifeline. Rusty shifted again, checking that both of them were still there. Faith rubbed his chest. Michael rubbed behind his ear, and the three of them stayed connected in that small, warm circle, healing, breathing, trusting, without realizing how much their lives had already intertwined. Rusty slept so deeply that even his dreams seemed peaceful now. His small body rose and fell in gentle waves against Faith's lap, and every exhale felt like the house itself was finally letting go of breath it had been holding for far too long. Michael watched the two of them with a softness he didn't know he was capable of, a softness he thought had died with his wife. But here it was again, quiet, warm, alive. Faith's fingers moved slowly through Rusty's fur, her touch rhythmic and calming. She looked tired, though, her eyes heavy, her back slightly curved from hours on the floor. Faith, Michael whispered. It's late. She nodded without looking up. I know. I'm just waiting until he falls into a deep sleep so I can move him without waking him. Michael crouched beside her again. Not too close, but closer than before. You've been here all day, he murmured. Faith smiled tiredly. I didn't want him to cry tonight. Michael's chest tightened. Neither did I. A quiet moment passed. Soft, fragile. Michael spoke first. Faith, I want you to rest. You can barely keep your eyes open. I'm fine, she whispered. You're not, he said gently. You're exhausted. She kept her focus on Rusty. He needs me. Michael's gaze softened. He's not the only one. Faith blinked, surprised, the words settling over her like warmth. Let me take him to his bed, Michael said softly. Won't he be scared? Faith asked. Michael hesitated. If you come with me, he won't be. Faith nodded. Okay. Together, clumsily, carefully, they lifted Rusty's small, fragile body. Michael supported his weight. Faith held his head close to her chest. Rusty didn't whimper or resist. He trusted them completely. They walked quietly down the dim hallway to the small room beside Michael's bedroom, the one that had become Rusty's safe space. Faith knelt and placed Rusty gently onto the soft dog bed. Michael helped pull the blanket up, tucking it around the old dog like a child being put to sleep. Faith whispered, "Good night, sweetheart. You're safe." Rusty's tail tapped once, weak but full of meaning, before he drifted back into deeper sleep. Michael stood beside her, and for a moment the two of them remained in the half-lit room, watching Rusty breathe. You gave him this, Michael said quietly. This peace. Faith shook her head. I just showed up. Michael's eyes warmed. Sometimes showing up is everything. Faith swallowed, overwhelmed. The room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a night lamp. The shadows were gentle, not frightening. For once, the house didn't feel enormous or cold. It felt intimate, human. Michael turned to her. Faith, she looked up. He hesitated, careful, respectful, afraid of crossing a line she didn't want crossed. But Faith didn't step away. She waited. When Michael spoke again, his voice was low and genuine. You changed this house. You brought life back into it. She smiled shyly. No, Rusty did that. He shook his head. Rusty reacted to you. Faith chewed her lip. I just saw someone hurting, and I saw someone who could heal, he whispered. Michael exhaled slowly, unable to look away from her. Faith, I don't know what this is yet, but I know I don't want you to feel invisible here. And I know I don't want today to be the last day you stay by Rusty's side. Or mine. Her eyes softened. I don't want it to be the last day either. Michael stepped half a step closer, still giving her space, still waiting for her to choose. Faith didn't move away. She didn't even breathe. Her voice came out barely audible. I've never belonged anywhere. You belong here, Michael said simply. Faith blinked fast, tears gathering. I'm just a cleaning lady. You're the reason my dog is alive, he said. You're the reason this house feels warm again. His voice softened. You're not just anything. Faith swallowed hard, tears threatening to spill. I don't know how to thank you for saying that. You already did, Michael whispered. By being you. A silence fell, gentle, full of tenderness. Faith looked down shyly. Michael, She hesitated, then softly. I'm not invisible anymore. Michael's eyes warmed, his voice dropping to something tender. No, Faith, you're finally seen. A tear slipped down her cheek. She expected him to look away. He didn't. Instead, Michael reached out with slow, careful intention and brushed the tear with the back of his fingers. The touch was feather-light, barely there, but it made Faith exhale a shaky breath she'd been holding in for years. She didn't pull back. She didn't hide. She let herself be seen. Michael spoke in a whisper. "Thank you for coming into this house tonight." Faith smiled softly. "Thank you for letting me stay." They stood there a few inches apart, two broken hearts stitched gently together by the old dog sleeping at their feet. Not lovers, not yet, but something new, something warm, something possible. Rusty sighed contentedly in his sleep, as if giving his final blessing. Faith brushed her fingers over Rusty's back one last time. "Good night, sweetheart," Michael whispered behind her. "Good night, Faith." She turned toward him, pausing in the doorway. "Good night, Michael." He closed his eyes briefly, savoring the sound. Faith walked out of the room with quiet steps. Not small, not timid, but steady, certain, belonging. And Michael watched her go, knowing without any doubt, this was the night everything changed. Rusty survived. The mansion warmed. Faith found her place. Michael found a reason to feel again. Their story wasn't ending, it was beginning.